Welcome to another FPL video. This is going to be the best Game Week 4 wildcard team you can make, and no, on screen is definitely not the best wildcard team you can make for this game week. It is my current team. I'll be talking about that in future team selection and preview videos, so don't worry about that. And I'm also going to be making a best free hit team, which is going to be a regular occurrence on this channel. But for now, the wildcard in Game Week 4 is going to be a big talking point. Ronaldo's been added to FPL, so without further ado, let's see what the best wildcard team is. So in my reaction stream the other day, I actually showed a team that you can make with some kind of just initial ideas. I've made a few changes from that video and I'll be explaining them. But of course, there are different ways to go about it. I always say this, and just because you see this, it doesn't mean you can't maybe go for one or two changes and kind of go with your own gut feeling and maybe look at some stats which back other players. There's definitely no right or wrong answer. This is just, in my opinion, the best team that you can make. But of course, you can always downgrade one player to then invest money elsewhere if you think one particular area of the pitch is lacking. So in terms of the goalkeepers, this is something we actually discussed with the viewers, and Sanchez is kind of a bit of a set and forget, but at the same time, maybe you could think at 4.5 million, can I do better? Now, Backman actually got a lot of save points against Spurs, but over the course of the season and even last season, it's not like he was making a ton of saves. But of course, it's going to depend ultimately on the opposition that Watford come up against, and it's the same with any keeper playing for any team. But there's also Raya, who's been at the moment the standout 4.5 million goalkeeper. The reason why I haven't opted for him in this best wildcard team is because the fixtures coming up for Brentford are very poor, and you don't just want to look at the next 2 or 3 fixtures. With a wildcard, you want to kind of look more long term and then maybe have some ideas for transfers, but ultimately you want players who are going to be good medium to long term. And to be honest, with Raya and the fixtures for Brentford, they just don't really look too promising. And with Sanchez, there's still some good fixtures to come for quite a while, and you don't really want to be using transfers on your goalkeepers. Of course, you still can, and I'm not going to be saying, you should never make a goalkeeper transfer, but you want to avoid them as much as possible, because ultimately it's the midfielders and attackers who are going to get you the bulk of the points. And then in terms of the second goalkeeper, it's just a 4 million who's actually fit and available. I've gone with Steele for the time being. He should be pretty much filling in for Sanchez if something happens to him. But of course, Steele is he's typically the kind of third goalkeeper. So when the second goalkeeper comes back for Brighton, Steele will then be back to being the third choice. But at this moment in time, I think Sanchez and Steele is pretty fine. You can always go for maybe a bit more of an expensive goalkeeper, so maybe Hugo Lloris at 5.5 million. He's been doing really well, but once again, just like Raya, he's got some very tough fixtures coming up, and maybe you could use one of those Spurs slots on the defenders who are offering great value, or even the midfield such as Heung-min Son and Harry Kane up front. So I'm not too keen on Hugo Lloris. 5.5 million is a lot of money. I don't expect him to continue the points that he's doing so far. And then in terms of other players, I think at 5 million, there's also the Wolves goalkeeper, Jose Sarr. At 5 million, he could be decent if you don't want to go for Cody or even Saiss or one of these other players. Marcel's another one. You can always go for Jose Sarr in goal at 5 million. Could be decent with the fixture run that Wolves are about to embark on. So those are kind of the goalkeepers I'd recommend. If you have any, of course, and same with any other position, let me know down in the comment section below. In terms of the defence, I'll just kind of address the player I'm kind of not too keen on, but he's 4.1 million. He's going to be playing games. It's Livramento. I would prefer Duffy, but I think he's going to be losing his spot soon when Veltman returns. Livramento should continue to start for the time being, and that's why I've gone for him, really. It's just because he plays. I don't trust Southampton to get too many clean sheets this season, but if Livramento starts and they just get the occasional one, it's just great value at 4.1 million, but I'm not too keen on him, to be honest. Looking at the rest of the defence, there is Cody, and you could go for Marcel instead at 4.5 million, but I've just gone for Cody. He's nailed. He's not really going to be benched. Since the end of last season, he's actually shown a bit more attacking threat, but I wouldn't really expect it to be converted into too many points, but he could maybe get the occasional attacking return here or there. But 4.5 million, great fixtures for Wolves. I think he could be great value, and if not, what you could do is, instead of going for Region, for example, go for another 5 million defender or someone else, and then you can get a Spurs defender, whether it's Tanganga, Sanchez or Dyer at 4.5 million. They're probably the standouts at this moment in time, along with Cody and Marçal. So that's kind of a different way to go about it, and that's what I keep on saying. You don't have to just go with the team you see on screen. You can change things up, and that's the kind of beauty of it. So if you don't want a Spurs defender at 5.1, you can maybe get one of the cheaper ones at 4.5. Then Trent Alexander-Arnold, he's someone who's not going to be too popular on wildcards because people will want to downgrade him and invest more money into the midfield and attack. And I completely understand that. It's very difficult to fit him in along with 2 or 3 other premium players. But still, Trent Alexander-Arnold, great fixtures long term, and he's just got so much attacking potential. If you compare his expected goal involvements to any other defender, it's just a huge difference. I think Soufal is second, but the gap between him and Trent is huge, and it just shows, and it kind of pays off in this premium price you pay for a defender, 7.5 million, but you compare it to the kind of midfielder at 7.5, apart from Greenwood at the moment and Jota, Trent pretty much outperforms any other midfielder at that price bracket or below. So still a very good option. You don't have to go without him. You could always try to find a way to get him in. And because Harvey Elliott is actually taking some set pieces, it's not necessarily a bad thing for Trent, because Harvey Elliott is actually passing the ball to Trent and he's crossing the ball in and into some very good positions. So I still think he's a great option. He's not blank so far this season, so I definitely recommend him. Then there's Reguilon, of course. Just like I alluded to earlier, if you don't want to go for him, you can go for Sanchez or one of the other 4.5 million defenders from Spurs, and then maybe get someone like Soufal instead of Reguilon. But I just think at the moment he's offering bonus points potential, attacking potential, hasn't got an assist or goal yet, but I think the time will come where Reguilon can do the business. So I think Reguilon is a very good choice, and I would definitely recommend him if you want quite a relatively cheap defender. And Spurs have been defending very well so far. I don't expect it to continue long term, but I think for at least the next 4 or 5 game weeks, even through some of the tougher fixtures, I think Reguilon can be a very good choice, and he's still got some very good fixtures sprinkled in between, so I think he's a great and excellent choice. Then there's Rudiger. I think with any Chelsea defender, just stick to one, I think. Rudiger's probably one of the most nailed. With Christensen, he's at 5 million. I don't think he's as nailed as Rudiger, and if Koundé comes into the club, that can change things, so keep an eye on that situation. There's also still Thiago Silva, Azpilicueta can play in a back three, and so many more. Chelsea have an abundance of options, but Rudiger, I think, at 5.5 million just offers you that security of starts. When Reece James returns from suspension, I think at 5.5 million, if you can afford the occasional benching, I'd probably recommend him the most, because he's got so much attacking potential. He can easily get in and amongst the bonus points, and yeah, just great player to watch. And if you're not watching Chelsea and you see Reece James just being so good, and he's got the clean sheet potential as well, it's just very difficult to watch a player like Reece James without owning him. But yeah, for the time being, I think Rudiger is probably the best choice. Chelsea have some difficult fixtures after game week 4, but still, from game week 7 to 11, if you look at their run, it's absolutely sensational. And I think either on a wildcard or a free transfer, just getting in on 1 or 2 Chelsea players at this moment in time places you in a very good position come game week 7, where Chelsea are surely going to score more goals and get more clean sheets and just get so many good results. They've been fantastic so far, and they're definitely a team to keep an eye on for the title race. Looking at the midfield, this is where it can really change a lot. I think the defence, I wouldn't say we're limited in options, but it's kind of clearer who to go for. With the midfield, I think there are different choices you can go for, and it's not necessarily a bad decision. So Rafinha, medium to long term, is good. He's not going to be travelling with Brazil to a red list country, so he's not going to be quarantining and missing game weeks 4, 5 and 6. So that's not an issue anymore. And from game week 5 onwards, Rafinha has fantastic fixtures. Of course, game week 4 against Liverpool is not ideal, and I definitely wouldn't recommend him on a free hit. But for a wild card looking for the long term, I think Rafinha can be one of the best at his price. You can also still go for Benrahma. I think he's a great choice too. Ismail Assar, still very good. You can go for him too. And of course, Harvey Barnes is someone to keep an eye on in the future, but at this moment in time, I'd probably steer clear from him and other Leicester players, at least the offensive ones, but he's also someone to keep an eye on going forward. And if you have enough money, you can always go for Jota. Even if you already have Greenwood, you can go for both of them, but of course, that would require a downgrade elsewhere. If you look at the budget, actually, that I have for this team, I've got exactly 0 million remaining, so that's kind of what I'm working with at the moment, and it's impossible to have everyone you want. But yeah, instead of Rafinha, you can can go for Benrahma, Sarr, and other of these sorts of players. And then Greenwood, I think for the time being, he should be nailed and continue to start. He's been so important for United. He's been scoring some crucial goals, including a winner against Wolves. And yeah, he's just been sensational, a great finisher, and he can continue. The problem I have with him long term is that when the Champions League comes around with Ronaldo coming into the mix, I think Greenwood could be rotated quite a bit. But with Daniel James actually moving, it looks like, to Leeds United, it does open up a bit more of an opportunity for Greenwood to maintain his starting berth. He can play on the right-hand side, he can play up front, and potentially even on the left. What United could do actually is play Sancho on the left, Greenwood on the right, and Ronaldo up top for the time being until Rashford comes back. So that's one possibility to consider, and I think Greenwood for the next 2 or 3 game weeks should start, but don't be surprised if he is occasionally benched. It's kind of similar to Ferran Torres, who everyone is talking about right now. His price has gone up. You can also go for him, but with Ferran Torres, it's even worse, the situation of rotation. Just be prepared for the occasional benching, and, don't be too surprised as Pep Roulette. But with Greenwood, that could happen also, just not to the same extent as Ferran Torres, but I'd recommend both of them for sure. And then there's Demarai Gray. What I would say about this team, maybe one weakness is having double Everton attack. Not necessarily a bad thing, but maybe doubling up on them. I don't know, Everton can be a bit inconsistent sometimes, so it is definitely a risk. But Demarai Gray as your 4th or 5th choice midfielder, fantastic choice. At this moment in time, he's the best among the 5.5, 5.6 million midfielders. There's still Mbeumo to look at, Odegaard, Smith Rowe, and maybe even Gallagher, who knows. But at this moment in time, Demarai Gray looks like the best one. He's got the best stats, and I definitely recommend him if you're looking for a 5.5 or 5.6 million midfielder. But of course, if you do have Calvert-Lewin already up front, you don't have to go for Demarai Gray. So let me know what you suggest down in the comment section below in regards to having 2 Everton attackers. Would you do that? And if not, who would you get in instead of Gray or Dominic Calvert-Lewin? Now, this is a bit more of a no-brainer pick. Mohamed Salah, he's been doing so well. He's actually being shipped out by so many managers, and I think he actually experienced a price drop, if I'm not mistaken, which is absolutely bizarre, considering the form, considering the fixtures coming up. Let's actually look at the fixtures coming up for Mohamed Salah. So he's got Leeds away. I think it's a great captaincy shout for Game Week 4. Crystal Palace in Game Week 5 is looking really, really promising. Game Week 6 against Brentford away. Man City at home in Game Week 7, yeah, that's a bit more difficult. But even in Game Week 8 against Watford away, he's got a good record against the Hornets. I think Salah is a great captaincy option for the next, I'd say 4 of the next 5 game weeks. So definitely wouldn't underestimate him. And of course, with Ronaldo, Lukaku, Kane, and so many other premiums coming into the mix, some people are going away from Salah. But as you saw against Chelsea, it just takes one penalty, one moment, and he's in and amongst the bonus points. He's just a fantastic FPL asset, and I probably wouldn't go without him. Then 4.5 million midfielders, we don't have too many to choose from. You can go for Gilmore, maybe Brownhill. There might be another one that catches your eye, but ultimately just someone who plays every week. You can get 1 to 3 points pretty much and can stand in when needed. But really, I wouldn't pay too much attention to the kind of 4.5 million midfielders. They're not offering too much value. And even the ones at around 5 million, we're mainly looking at the ones at 5.5 million and above, such as Demarai Gray. So with Brownhill, wouldn't really think about him too much. So Mikel Antonio, he's been the best FPL player so far, the highest point scorer, and actually a very interesting kind of fact here. Mohamed Salah, when he actually got 300 points and more in his debut season, it actually took him, I think, 6 game weeks to reach 40-point mark, and Antonio's done that in already just 3 game weeks in half that time, which just shows his consistency, his explosiveness, 3 double-digit returns on the bounce, regardless of the opposition. I think Antonio is a must-have for the time being. What I would say about him long-term, and something to kind of consider when the Europa League comes into the mix, there is a higher chance of him being maybe occasionally rotated or at least kind of rested because he is injury prone, and yeah, the injuries can come in, unfortunately. Hopefully it doesn't, but further down the line, it could be an issue. Antonio's fitness and also just the amount of games West Ham have to play. So even if Antonio's fully fit, he just might not be at the peak physical condition. And same with West Ham, they might be a bit more jaded, a bit tired, and they might not be as explosive and as potent up front as they are currently. But that's something just to keep an eye on in the future. For the time being, Antonio, I wouldn't say he's absolutely essential. You can go without him, but I would recommend him. I think he's, at the moment, the best striker option in FPL. As discussed before with Dominic Calvert-Lewin and having him and Demarai Gray, that's something for you to decide. I personally probably wouldn't go for both of them at the same time, although, in my opinion, Calvert-Lewin is the second best striker you can go for, and then the Mari Gray is the best around his price. So you could maybe try to find a compromise there. But Calvert-Lewin, his stats are absolutely insane. Only Antonio really is surpassing him for expected goals, for shots in the box, for shots overall. And Calvert-Lewin is on penalties now, so there's just so much to love. He's got great fixtures all the way up until game week 12. And yeah, Calvert-Lewin is just a must-have. The only problem, obviously, as you can see on screen, is he is flagged with an injury. I think he had a toe injury, then he had like a muscle injury. It might be the thigh. So we have to keep an eye on that situation. So I wouldn't be bringing him in just yet. I'd wait until the final few days before the Game Week 4 deadline, see the press conferences, see what Benitez says before making a final decision. But if he's fit, Calvert-Lewin is someone I definitely want in my team. And the move from Danny Ings to Calvert-Lewin just seems like a no-brainer, really. And finally, the return of Cristiano Ronaldo to the Premier League. And as I predicted, and I'm sure a lot of people did too, 12.5 million price tag. And there you go. You see the picture there. And already people are getting him in. And that ownership is going to be crazy by the end of Game Week 3 or heading into Game Week 4, really. By the time the deadline passes, I'd be surprised if his ownership is not over 30% at the very least. So many people are going to be getting rid of Bruno, making 2 free transfers and getting Ronaldo in. I might even consider that myself. But the reason why I've gone for him is because of that Game Week 4 fixture against Newcastle. And what you can do with Ronaldo is have him for the next 3 game weeks and then make an immediate switch to Lukaku. Because Ronaldo is 1 million more expensive than Lukaku, you don't have to worry about finding funds elsewhere. You can have Ronaldo already if you are wildcarding, and then in game week 7 to 11 when Chelsea have that fantastic fixture run, which coincidentally coincides with Man United having a very poor fixture run, you can just swap between the two pretty much. And then when Manchester United have fantastic fixtures, let's say from game week 12 or game week 14 onwards, that's when you can jump in on Ronaldo again if you have the funds. So that's something I would recommend. The only kind of thing I would say about it is that we haven't seen Ronaldo play for Manchester United yet, at least in his second stint at the club. So we have to wait and see. We might have to be a bit cautious. But if you are willing to kind of just go for it, get Ronaldo in right now, and then in game week 7, move him on to Lukaku. And what you can have there is pretty much rotate between Ronaldo, Lukaku, and Kane, depending on the form and the fixtures and the underlying stats that come about. But Ronaldo, 12.5 million, it's a good price for him, and technically the most expensive player in the game. Obviously Salah was going up in price, or he was 12.6 before, but yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see the prices next season, and also just by the end of the season, who's going to reach 13 million. Ronaldo could easily be one, Salah another, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. So that's the best Game Week 4 wildcard team you can make. Of course, there are definitely holes to pick out. Maybe instead of Cody, you can go for Marcel. Instead of Livramento, maybe upgrade him to a Spurs defender at 4.5 million, have a bit more defensive depth there. Instead of Rafinha, you can go for Benrahma. Maybe just not having 2 Everton attackers. Ronaldo could be a bit risky, despite how good he is, just getting him in straight away. He might not even start against Newcastle. That's another thing to consider. So there's definitely some ways to potentially improve this team. But at this moment in time, I think this is a very solid foundation for a wildcard at least. So definitely keep an eye on it. Just kind of generate some ideas, and if you are thinking of wildcarding, this can be a very good place to start off. And if you enjoy this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here. Like I said before, there's going to be a best free hit team video coming up, same with the game week preview, team selection, and same with more UCL fantasy content, including tutorial guides, team selections, deadline streams, and I'll be doing the same for FPL, same with reaction streams after the end of each game week. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on that. And I did actually make a UCL Fantasy first draft video. If you haven't already, check that out. And there'll be more content coming to the channel. And yeah, just keep sharing this video around with anyone who loves FPL, UCL Fantasy, and football. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Dylan_RCM. I post regularly on those platforms, and you can contact me. And also, every single game week before the deadline, you can send in your teams, and either in a deadline stream or in just a regular video, I can actually just dedicate that entirely to your teams and just review them. And rather than just give an actual rating, the main thing is to give constructive criticism and see what's good in your team, what's bad, what can be improved, even for that game week itself. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.